Those who walk in darkness have seen a great light. A great light. I confess that first time going over these readings, when I read the words "great light," the first thing that came to mind was the one scene from The Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf is riding out to go defend the Gondorian warriors as they're returning back, as they're being attacked by the Nazgul, and he holds up his staff, and this great beam of light shines out to protect the soldiers so they could come back. That was a little nerdy. So, I also thought of those times where you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and you forget that you're in this half awake, half asleep stupor, and you accidentally turn on the lights, and then you're hit by this great flash of light, and then you're all discombobulated, don't know what's going on. I thought of that as well. But sometimes those great lights aren't so bright. So, the lands of Zebulun and Naphtali. What? Where? Does anyone know about the lands of Zebulun and Naphtali? Raise your hand if you do. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, what and where Zebulun and Naphtali? Well, when Isaiah the prophet was offering his prophecy, the lands of Zebulun and Naphtali were in the northern kingdom of Israel. And this was a time when the Assyrians were invading and conquering the northern kingdom. So in the northern part of Israel, in modern day Nazareth, where the Sea of Galilee is. So Isaiah is offering this prophecy. Those who walk in darkness, he says, have seen a great light. In the midst of the danger, in the midst of the difficulty, there will be a light for you, lands of Zebulun and Naphtali. That was in Isaiah's time. There will be a light. They ended up being conquered. The kingdom was destroyed. But there will be a light. In Jesus' time, the lands of Zebulun and Naphtali, there's a small town that existed in the land of Zebulun, and that was Nazareth. And Nathanael perhaps had the best line about Nazareth when he said about Jesus, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" Basically, that place, it's not the best, right? It's a little more on the poorer side, perhaps a little rough, perhaps a little tough, maybe a little dangerous. Kind of like our neighborhood around the church, no? Can anything good come from this neighborhood? Yes, is the answer, yes. In the same way that the answer was yes when Nathanael asked that question, yes. Good things do come from this neighborhood, absolutely. When the people of Zebulun and Naphtali were walking in darkness, could they recognize the light around them? That's the question for all of us today. When we sit in darkness, as the gospel says, when we sit in darkness, can we recognize the light? There is a lot of darkness around us. Last week there was a shooting in which 4 members of a family were killed by one of their family members. And that funeral is here tomorrow. There will be 4 caskets, and it will be difficult. It will be painful. There's other violence in the neighborhood. Across the street at the gas station, farther down the road on Clark Avenue. Sometimes I hear gunshots from my window. The sirens are always blaring. From the hospital, yes, but police sirens as well. This neighborhood has its antics and characteristics, we'll say. Over on the corner of 25th and Kinkle. There's a lot of darkness around us. There is darkness in the community. There's sickness. Members of our community suffering with cancer and other progressive illnesses. Amid the darkness, lights shine. Amid the darkness, lights shine. I love the imagery of light. It is all around the scriptures, it's all around us, it's all around our prayers in the church. The imagery of light. Light pervades the darkness. It enters in and the darkness dissipates. Light offers clarity. Light offers guidance. It enables us to see. We turn on the light, and then what once was dark is now enlightened for us so that we can see, so that we can move. Light changes a situation. Light brings hope. I like thinking about lighthouses. We're blessed to be on the coast, and so there's a couple lighthouses around us. Lighthouses for sailors are that beacon of hope, especially in the midst of storms. They're able to see the light and know exactly where to go. But there's a lot of false lights around. A lot of false lights that try to offer us solace and comfort, but don't really last, don't really linger, don't really offer us the true comfort that we desire. The false lights of the glow of these handheld boxes. I just got off of an 8-day Ignatian silent retreat, and the temptation to return to social media and to scroll and to waste time on my phone was real, and I wish that I could say that I was strong in the face of that temptation, but unfortunately, not so strong. There's the false light of the glow as we open the fridge door for a little midnight snack, as we seek that comfort that's there, this light that's shining behind glorious food. But it's a false light. There's the false light of the pink hue on 25th and Kinkle, a very real false light. There's the false light of stadiums. Sports are good, absolutely. But when our focus on Sunday, perhaps upcoming Super Bowl Sunday, if our focus is more in line with, more on those sporting events than on Sunday Mass or offering time to the Lord, then yes, that's a false light. The false lights tend to be pretty darn bright. Yes, they do. But what about the light? Can we recognize the light? Can we recognize that true light? We know that the true light ultimately comes from Christ. Christ is our light. In the beginning of John's Gospel, he says that this light, Christ, was the light of the human race, the light that shines in the darkness, this true light. Sometimes the lights can be dim. These true lights, they can be dim in comparison to the darkness, this true light that ultimately comes from Christ. Lights. When we met with the family to discuss funeral preparations, one of the family members said that she desires greatly to extend forgiveness to the person that murdered the 4 individuals, her family members. This little light. We have a parishioner here who is paralyzed from the neck down, who we've been praying for. Diomar is his name. He's been in and out of the hospital, and the last time that I went to go see him, he expressed his desire to be well and to be stable long enough to be able to come back to Mass, to be here physically with us, with the community, to pray with us. This little light, this little light. I think back to when my mom had cancer. She was always joyful in the midst of her cancer, so much so that when my siblings and I would get worked up, we realized, how can we be when our mom is this guiding light for us? These lights are dim. What is this desire for forgiveness in the midst of the horrific tragedy of the shooting? This dim light. What is this desire to come to Mass, to be with us physically in the midst of a terrible and painful paralysis? I think of the Easter Vigil as the church is completely dark, and one single candle, the Paschal candle that represents Christ, processes into the church, and one by one we receive light from that candle, a small light. We pass it to the next person, and the next person, and the next person, and then after just a little bit of time, the entire church is filled with light. A dim light, started dim, started small, spreads and pervades and permeates so that the entire space is lit. Sometimes it can be difficult to recognize the light, and sometimes it's hidden, and sometimes it takes time. When Isaiah was prophesying to the people of Zebulun and Naphtali that they will see a great light, that was 700 years before Christ came. 700 years before that light, before that people would walk in the light, before they would see that light. Sometimes the light takes time for us to recognize, and that is painful. That is very, very painful, but the light shines. So when we sit in darkness, can we recognize the light? The light that is amid the darkness, and that's important for us to understand. When we sit in darkness, this light is amid the darkness. It doesn't necessarily cast out the darkness immediately. It will. It will. Christ does that. Christ is our light. And in him there is no darkness at all. And the darkness does not penetrate the light. The darkness does not penetrate the light. And our church building is a beautiful representation of that. Because the outside is black. It's darkened from all the soot from the steel factories over the decades. But the darkness and the blackness did not affect anything on the inside. And how much more so is that for us? And dare I say that this church is even more beautiful because of what the outside looks like. You walk in, and this beauty that we see. How much more so is it for us, church? In the midst of the darkness around us, this light that we bear, this light that is Christ in us, how much more so for us? How much more beautiful are we as we bear this light amid the darkness? Can we recognize the light? Our prayer today, as we reflect on the readings, our prayer today as we receive Christ in the Eucharist, as we move forward the rest of this week, our prayer is asking the Lord to help us to recognize that light. Recognize the light inside of us as co-workers may be gossiping or speaking negatively about another, and our response is positivity, is a compliment, is redirecting the conversation. The light inside of us, dim, but a light nonetheless. Can we recognize the light in ourselves, maybe in a prayer for courage in the midst of the difficulty? Can we recognize the light in a very busy dad who comes home and rather than calm, the first question is, "Hey Dad, do you have a minute?" And his response, "Yes." The light that's there, dim, but a beautiful light. And can we ultimately recognize the light in the Eucharist, the light that is Christ himself, that in this bright white host, this our source and summit of our faith, source and summit of all light. Can we recognize him as he is lifted up to the heights for us to see and gaze on his loveliness? Amen.